Oh.
Okay, the recording is on. This meeting is being recorded. Everybody's aware of that. On the screen, we see our author, John Guy, who has agreed to meet with us for a few minutes at the beginning of our hour. We had a couple of questions. One student who wasn't able to be here suggested that we ask what experiences you've had trying to persuade people to adopt these ideas or to accept these ideas, including people in prison as well as people not in prison, either one. She thought that she had trouble convincing people, particularly people who believe in conspiracy theories or people who believe in other medical claims, that they should look at the evidence. What are some of the experiences you've had in conveying these ideas to people?
Well, first off, let me say thanks for having me here. This is this is exciting, and I appreciate everybody taking the time to get through the book and have me in the class and offer me some questions. So I want to thank everybody for that. To answer the question, I think it's kind of a mixed bag. As far as persuading people goes, it depends on like the method you take and the delivery and the medium too. So like in my experience online, I've been like when I'm arguing with somebody online on social media or something with respect to, I don't know, climate change or vaccines or any of the, big topics that, conspiracy theorists like to kind of dwell on. The person I'm arguing with, usually I don't really have any impact on that person because they have all sorts of tactics and ways of weaseling out of the arguments or away from the evidence or whatever. But in private messages, I've had a lot of people contact me and said, things like, thanks for clarifying that. I haven't heard anybody make those points before, and it's good to see that you're doing that or whatever. I think during the early to late parts of 2021, several people that I know reached out to me and said that I had clarified a lot of issues on the COVID vaccines for them and that they had decided to get vaccinated. My mom is actually a pretty hardcore conspiracy theorist. She believes in reptilian shapeshifters and chemtrails, and she's pretty extreme, but I managed to get her convinced to get vaccinated. She fell along the lines of the vaccine caused autism controversies, and she never gets flu shots. And I don't think she thought that there were microchips in it, but nonetheless, I was able to convince her that it was the best thing to do. But there's a massive amount of number of people online that just are not receptive to anything that goes against what they already believe. And that's understandable. So I would say the vast majority of online debating about these topics has been largely ineffectual. In person, it's kind of a different story. Most of the time when I'm talking to people in person, there's already kind of a relationship built between me and that other person. And there are a lot more like online, it seems like a lot of the arguments are taken as personal attacks because, I could be a troll or whatever, and in person, it's not that way. You already kind of have an established relationship with that person. And it's a lot easier to, for the person to see your reactions and your demeanor when you're communicating those issues. So they're not necessarily going to think that you're screaming at them through a keyboard when you're just talking to them like a normal person. That nuance is teased out when you're in person. So in person, I think I have a lot more success having conversations with people than online ever. But again, it's time consuming. It's not like I have one conversation with somebody and they completely change their mind. It's usually a series of conversations over the course of weeks or months.
In your book, you sort of contrasted Think Straight with the Scare Straight program. That was a program that was popular among people trying to prevent crime. You said that program didn't work. How would this be a substitute for that? How would you go around, say, to high schools and try to persuade high school students not to undertake criminal activity, sell drugs, whatever? How would the Think Straight approach be different?
Well, the Scared Straight approach was basically, you know, put children or at-risk youth into a hostile environment and scare the crap out of them, and hope that they don't, hope that prevents them from reoffending or entering the system in the first place. And it was completely maladaptive. There's, it was kind of a political campaign, and at first it kind of seemed to make sense because intuitively it does. If you give a child a disincentive, they're going to strongly avoid that disincentive. But after a while, psychologists got involved, and they looked at it and they looked at the long-term effects of what was happening with these children, and it was completely maladaptive. They had tons of children who were more likely to end up in the system and more likely to create or to commit crimes than children who weren't part of the program. So it was a completely failed program. And what my attempt is with this book is to try to show that thinking straight, or critical thinking, or applying scientific skepticism or epistemology, if we can incorporate that into the school system at an early age, I think we would be more effective at instilling these kind of these sort of cognitive tools and values into children, so that when they grow up, they already have critical thinking skills as a baseline that they see the world through. And if there is some research that shows that teaching P4C, or philosophy for children, has a huge impact on a child's ability to reason, to work out problems, to get along with their peers, to have more emotional intelligence and better social interactions. And we know that's the case from a lot of research that's done on it. So I think implementing critical thinking I would advocate for it to be developed as kind of a curriculum throughout, somebody's school from K through 12, because like we do the same thing with like mathematics. There's elementary level mathematics, and then there's, you go from that to advanced level mathematics and so on until you graduate. I seem to have lost my video. Can everybody still see me?
We see you.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I see.
Okay. Well, anyway, I guess what I was driving at is that, I think teaching people how to reason is super important, and would definitely have an impact on better decision making, better quality of life, and so on.
I think some of the people in our class here are teachers or have been teachers. Have any of you had any experience with trying to teach critical thinking, or have a question, either here in the room or anybody who's on Zoom?
Ted, I was raising my hand. I wanted to.
Okay, just go ahead and speak, George.
Yeah. John, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, okay. I just want to say, first of all, I was really impressed with the scholarship of your book and how much you covered, from Greek philosophy to parapsychology and beyond. So I think it was really a well-researched book.
Thank you.
I had a question that I sent to Ted earlier, but I wanted to follow up on just what you were saying. I've been involved with some other people in developing presentations for high schools on climate change. And we've developed PowerPoint presentations. I'm not sure how effective they are, but what the students seemed to be most responsive to in those presentations was the issue of extreme weather. So we showed slides and videos of tornadoes and floods and sea rise and those kinds of things. But there's a environmental scientist. She happens to be an evangelical, but also a strong believer in climate change. And she's written a book called Saving Ourselves. And she's addressed in the first part of the book exactly what you were talking about, John, how to change people's fixed views on things like climate change. And her point is you need to make a personal connection with people. So find out what they're interested in. So if someone's interested in fishing, you can talk about the decline of fishing populations with climate change and the loss of coral reefs to heating oceans. So she has said, find a connection, a personal connection or a personal interest of somebody and work from there. So,
Yeah, I totally agree. In the research, if you look into the research on persuasion, there's different there's different camps that practice different methods of persuasion, and such as like street epistemology or deep canvassing. And if you look into those, like one of the things that all of those camps agree on is that building some sort of foundation with the person is crucial. To establishing what grounds you're on, so that you can be persuasive in some manner. Because if you skip that part of the process, then it's more like an attack. Whereas if you have a sort of just some sort of rapport with the individual that you're communicating with, and then you can kind of agree on shared values or shared facts, then you can kind of calmly work your way into the persuasion part of the process, whether you're using the Socratic method or deep canvassing or whatever it is you want to do. But yeah, absolutely, establishing that rapport is absolutely crucial, I think. And if you look into the science on denialism as well, there's a lot of different ways to actually communicate science. There's a science behind science communication, and none of it says attack people and scream at them. That would be completely contradictory to your goals. So if what I try to do online is I never use profanity, I never call names, I never try to attack a person, and I usually try to and I can't say I'm perfect either, but I try to stay as calm as possible and address people's claims on their merits. And like one of the things that I found that doesn't really work is pointing out, logical fallacies or cognitive biases, because those kind of go right over people's head and they feel like it's an attack. But you can do that without naming the fallacy or naming the bias, and just kind of doing it syllogistically, whereas you can say that this is your claim. So this is how your claim doesn't work. And here's why what I'm arguing works a little bit better. And I've had a lot more success doing that than, typing in all caps that you don't know what you're talking about. Scientists know more than you do, because it just doesn't get anywhere.
Right.
Wonder if you've had any discussions about the election recently. I noticed that in the news, is the people at Fox News themselves said that they didn't really believe what they were putting out, that it was false, and they've sort of taken it back. I don't know if people who were sort of real Trump supporters have lost any of their certainty or having doubts or changed, or have you had any, maybe somebody else in the class has had some discussions of that sort? Yes, we have a person in the room who wants to comment.
$2 billion they need to use.
Just speak up.
Maybe they were prompted by the fact they might lose $2 billion to change the laws. The lawsuit is really looming.
Were you able to hear what he said? I don't hear so well here in the room, actually. I hear better when the people online.
No, I wasn't able to make out what he was saying.
Maybe if you'd like to come up front and speak into the microphone, we could hear you better. That would be,
I'll pass.
I have a question. I mean, this is, can you hear me, John?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, this is sort of going back to what you said about school systems and maybe curriculums adopting some sort of programs for critical thinking. It seems like we've moved in the opposite direction from that. You know, some states are banning certain books, and that seems like that would limit opportunities for critical thinking. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's never in history have the people who have banned books been on the good side. that's not that hasn't happened yet. But yeah, I definitely think so. I think there's a lot of hurdles to implementing critical thinking into the school curricula, and one of them is that there's not like a textbook for grade school teachers or middle school teachers or high school teachers that they can lean on. So it's not like there's a bunch of critical thinking advocates saying, "Hey, here's a curriculum that you can follow" or anything. So there's definitely a deficit in that respect. We also have a huge. I mean, if you look at some of the numbers and stats are in my book, but if you look at how many people believe crazy pseudoscientific beliefs, it's huge. Like something like 4% of people believe in reptilians, and that's like 4% doesn't sound like a lot, but that's over 12 million people. And some of those people are teachers, and some of them are doctors and lawyers. And when we have a populace that believes outrageous claims, it's really not. It makes the job of science communicators even harder to try to persuade people who already hold those pseudoscientific beliefs to adopt something that actively challenges those. Like, for example, I think in like 2017, there was a poll that came out asking Republicans how important is it for a president to be honest, and like 70% of them said it was extremely important. And then a couple years into President Donald Trump's election or term as presidency, that number had dropped to below 50%. So not even a majority of Republicans believe that honesty was an important characteristic, whereas just a few years before they thought it was, a large majority of them believed as much. And so when you have a huge majority of people who don't value truth or they don't value facts, it makes it even more difficult to try to implement things that directly challenge their own epistemologies and what they see as true and what they see as false.
okay. I know John is on a break from work, and I promised I wouldn't go over half an hour, so we should think about any last questions, anything you want to get in. This is your chance.
Somebody has their hand up.
What?
Somebody has their hand up in Zoom world.
I think maybe that's me, unless it's somebody else. And I didn't directly have a question. I just had a couple of remarks. One is that I think our society is set up to be sort of anti-critical thinking. If you think about the things we tell children when they're small, all the little things like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy, we don't start children off on believing in logic and reality. And then the other thing is that a lot of parents, one of the reasons it's not taught in schools, I think, is a lot of parents are against their children being taught to critically think. I know my own family is ultra religious, and they are against that kind of thought, against being taught how to think critically, because that would interfere with their indoctrination of their children to the religious beliefs.
Yeah,
That's just,
I definitely appreciate those insights because I think you're absolutely right. The pushback isn't going to come just from schools. It's also going to come from parents, and probably for a multitude of reasons. One is if those ideas challenge the parents' beliefs, and the parents hold those beliefs with some level of sincerity, then they're not going to want their children adopting new ways of thinking. And two, it cannot be difficult to have a child who can think critically come home, right? So that can't be easy. So so I think the challenge will come on multiple fronts. But I definitely think it's a front worth delving into because I mean, I honestly believe that critical thinking is one of the only things that can kind of turn the tide, as far as how a culture thinks and how a society functions and makes decisions and elects officials. And until we get critical thinking into grade school, middle school, high school, it's we know we know where it's gone without that right now. So where is it going to go if we do implement it? It's kind of a question that's up for grabs, but I do think it could have a substantial impact.
Ted, can
Yeah.
I ask the question I asked in my email to you? Does John
Yes,
have
go
to?
ahead. About go ahead, George.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago we had a visitor to the class who said that the field of parapsychology has shifted to become more scientific, and they have done controlled experiments and found some significant results. And I was skeptical about that, but I just haven't followed the research in the Journal of Parapsychology and other such journals, because I've been a skeptic about parapsychology most of my adult life. But I wondered if you were familiar with this shift in parapsychological research or not.
I haven't heard of anything specific recently. I know, paradigm shifts are not uncommon in pseudosciences. For example, chiropractic has shifted from being, well, chiropractic is kind of split into two camps, right? There's mixers and there's straights. And straights are those who follow the traditional teachings of Daniel Palmer. They don't really deviate from them. And then mixers are those who claim to be mixing Daniel Palmer's ideas about subluxations into and mixing them with conventional medicine. And so you can make the argument with chiropractic that that it is kind of integrating into a more science-based field. But what's missing here is that it's completely pseudoscientific. The things that they're adopting into chiropractic that are science-based are already things practiced in evidence-based medicine. So it's not like they're doing anything new or novel. And if Susan Blackmore kind of changed the game in parapsychology, right? Because she conducted highly rigorous empirical tests on everything from astral projection to telekinesis, and she came up empty-handed. She was a strong believer. She went into the field of parapsychology to try to prove that parapsychological phenomena do exist. And after, I don't know at which point she actually changed her mind, but after 20 years of research, she said, none of this is real, so yeah, if they are using, better methods, then great for them. And if they find something that's worth, overturning well-established principles in physics and chemistry, then I'm all for it. I would, I would love to see that happen. But I'm extremely skeptical of those sort of claims, just because they can be framed in a way that are kind of misleading in what the actual studies claim.
Yeah, we'll cover some more of that maybe in our last class. I'm kind of familiar with some of the recent literature, so we can do that. I see it's we've taken a half an hour of John's time, and he's on a break from his job, so I think we ought to, unless somebody has something really urgent that they'd like to bring up, I think we should thank you for coming. We're enjoying your book, at least I've certainly enjoyed it. And we've been having a very interesting class here. I'm trying to combine the Zoom with the in-person, and that is technically difficult, also because I'm hard of hearing and I don't function so well in person, but we're doing our best. And I'm glad I was able to hear you since you're on Zoom. So let's give John a round of applause and
Thank you.
Unless there's some real last minute question, we'll invite you to sign off and get back to your paid employment there. I know you have to earn a living. You're not a retired person like us.
Yep. Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I guess the only thing I would say is that if you guys enjoyed the book, or if you didn't, I would love to see reviews. If you guys have finished it, yeah, get on Amazon or Goodreads or something, write a review. I would love to read it. If you have any kind of critical feedback that you would want to address, you can get a hold of me personally or write it in a review. I'm not opposed to having criticism made public as well. And Ted, if anybody would like my email address to reach out and contact me, feel free to give it to them.
Okay. Do that. I don't know how many of you bought the book on Amazon. We didn't order it at the bookstore here, so people probably did get it that way. And you can go on and put your comments at the end of the course. I think it's a good time to do that once you've had a chance to read something. Okay.
$1,000,000 was my source.
All right. I guess it's not quite time for us to take a break, so maybe I'll move on to our other subject, which was UFOs and extraterrestrials and things like that, which John did touch on in the book as well. So I'm going to go on to that topic.
All right. Well, Ted, I appreciate you having me. I will leave you to the discussion on UFOs. That is a lively discussion.
Yeah, there's a lot of, it keeps coming up. Every generation has its UFO flap, but we've had some recent.
They do.
Well,
thank you, everybody, for having me. Thank you, Ted. And yeah, I'll look forward to possibly seeing some reviews from you guys.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Guy.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think this is a good time to just go on to the other topic unless somebody wants to bring something up. We did have the question, maybe just for a practical question, of our makeup class. I first thought we would meet on the the following week, but there's no week's break between sessions in the ILR, so I don't want to meet in conflict with the class. Another class will have the room. I was thinking Saturday the 11th. A couple of people said that was good. Other people said, one person said they just soon quit with 7. I don't know if we need to take a vote on it. I was thinking maybe we should have a class, but just on Zoom and not try to use the room. I think we can do discussion better. I do discussion better on Zoom because I can hear people. Okay. So that would be my inclination, would be to have a class on Saturday the 11th, but to just have it on Zoom and not get the room. But if people really want to come to the room, I can inquire and we could do it that way. Does anybody have any thoughts about that?
I like Zoom.
A number of you are on Zoom anyway, but how about the people who are here in the room? You use Zoom too, right? You wouldn't have to come in on Saturday. Why don't we go with that? We'll have the class on Saturday 11th. We'll do it on Zoom. I'm going to try to stimulate more discussion that way. I'll have questions going back to things we've done and so on. So we'll do it that way. Our next class in a week will be focused on conspiracy theories, which is the last chapter in John Guy's book. So we'll do that next week. And then on the 11th, we'll have a Zoom class we'll tie everything together and look a bit at the history of critical thinking, some of the questions we've discussed with John here about the applications of it. And those who want to join us, if you can't make Saturday, I do have the recorder going, so you still be able to watch it on your own convenience. So that'll be our plan as far as the makeup. That works well for me. I do well on Zoom because I can put the headphones on and I can hear everybody, and it works well for me.
So Ted, what time on the 11th?
I think I'm going to go with the start the other topic now because it's a little too early to start take a break.
Ted, what time on the 11th?
Start this slideshow at the beginning. And
You want to know what time on the 11th?
Ted,
yeah, somebody's saying something.
he wants to know what time on Saturday.
I thought 3 o'clock at the same time as this class would be a good idea, although it doesn't have to be. One of the good things about this, it doesn't involve the scheduling office in the college. I can do it anytime. But why don't we plan at 3 o'clock, and we'll take as long as we like. If we don't go for 2 hours, that's okay too. But I certainly can have material to present. So we'll do that 3 o'clock on Saturday, the 11th on Zoom. I will, of course, email you that information too. So for anybody who's not here. Let me see now, I was going to share a screen. I want to share with sound. And we'll go there. Okay, we're looking at UFOs, abductions, and other contact experiences. Has anybody here ever been up to a flying saucer? And zoomed up in the middle of the night and had any of your eggs or sperm harvested? If anybody's had that experience, I have gone to meetings of people who believe they did have that experience. So I have talked to people face to face as well as read about it. The community is moving away from that on other things. So there's a matter of exactly what the issues are changes from time to time. This is something that's been going on for a long time, that there have been reports of strange, unexplained phenomena. This is one of the earliest. You can see the screen. This is from 1561. A celestial phenomenon over Nuremberg, Germany, as printed in an illustrated news notice. UFO enthusiasts have said that this is probably an aerial battle of extraterrestrial origin. Skeptics have said that it's likely to be a sundog. I had not heard of sundogs before. Has anybody ever heard of a sundog or seen a sundog? It's a weather phenomenon. Here's a picture of a actual sundog in Fargo, North Dakota, which apparently had one that was very noticeable. This is something that happens when there's ice crystals in the air and they cause the sunlight to be diffused in a certain way. You see these, you can see the three parts to it, and there's visible also a 22-degree halo, the arcs passing through each sundog, and a sun pillar, the visible line. Maybe that's a little similar to what was in this artistic representation. Of course, we don't know what happened then. We can't prove that it wasn't some aliens there. That's the thing, is what keeps us going. I mean, just to prove that something didn't happen is very difficult. But that is a possible explanation. In 1865, the Missouri Democrat gives an account of the sighting of an unknown flying object. A strange story, remarkable discovery, discovered by James Noonley, who was a trapper out in the woods. He saw a bright luminous body in the sky. It crashed to the ground about 2 miles from his campsite, obliterating everything in its path. He discovered a great giant object which was made of rock-like material that had been driven into the side of a mountain. The newspaper said that probably was a meteor which was used by extraterrestrials to land. Now, what is the problem with this report? The thing with this report is that there would be physical evidence of this. If a huge meteor had crashed and obliterated trees, other people could have gone out there and seen it, even with the photographic technology they had in 1865, they could have taken a picture of it. It's not there. There's no report of anybody else ever seeing this thing. It disappeared. And that is consistently the problem with UFO reports, is that you get reports of people saying they saw things. You don't really get any physical evidence. And the fact that there's no physical evidence is hard to explain, particularly with this kind of a report. If you just see a light in the sky, the only evidence is likely to be a photograph of that. And we have more and more of those. But as far as a quality photograph that really shows a craft or something, we don't have that. We have fuzzy sorts of photographs. So the people say, maybe this is happening. People like to speculate about it, but they don't have evidence. This is one from 1896. This is a drawing, what somebody said it looks like. This is an airship that passed over Sacramento on Tuesday evening, just before November 19th, whatever day of the week that was, as described by eyewitnesses. Eyewitnesses saw this. Apparently it had 3 propellers on the bottom and beams of light. And of course, they really weren't aircraft at that time that they could model this on. The newspaper editor said he was incredulous of the airships. He did not like to disbelieve many persons of known veracity, claiming to have optical evidence of its existence. They gave reports from people who are people of good reputation, good standing in the community, entitled to public confidence. How could so many men of understanding be wholly deceived? So really, something must be going on because so many people said they saw it. And that has been typical of reports, that there are lots of people, there are people who are reliable, credible people that generally have standing in the community, at least many of them. There may be other kinds of people too, but there are many people who are considered good witnesses and who would be believed if they testified to something in court, and they claim to have seen these things. So there's a belief that it must be true. The problem with this is that there's never physical evidence. There's no physical evidence that's ever held up, and nothing ever happens. In the sense that the sort of scenarios that you see in fiction where the guy comes out and says, "Take me to your leader," or something, that hasn't happened. There's no extraterrestrial person has ever appeared and gone on TV and gone on a talk show or something. At least there's no evidence that anybody has. That's where you get into conspiracy theories, because people say, well, it's been hidden, it's been disguised, the government has covered it up. They claim that it has happened, and we'll get into some of that discussion. So it seems like we have what people in critical thinking call a flap, which is a period of intense incitement that happens every generation. It seems like that happens approximately 20, 25 years apart. In the 50s, the 70s, the 90s, and we have had some quite recently, just this year and a couple of years ago, that we'll be getting into. In 1947, civilian pilot sees an object flying near Mount Rainier. He said it's skipping like a saucer, like when you take a flat stone and you can throw it into a lake and it'll skip up and down. And from that, the newspaper picked up the term flying saucer, and that became popular, although he didn't really say that it looked like a saucer. He said that it behaved like a saucer. But that idea came up. You had the Roswell incident, which we'll talk about, when debris fell out of the sky, and there is physical debris. But the Air Force looked at it and said, yes, this is a balloon, a weather balloon that crashed. It's not anything extraterrestrial. I mean, you do have physical evidence of things of that sort. In 1961, Barney and Betty Hill recovered memories of alien abduction. And that's the second step. It's not just seeing something, it's they're actually abducted. And this became part of a popular book and a story. They believed that they had been taken into the saucer and that they had talked to people and been shown things. And the guy gave them a souvenir to take home, but then he changed his mind and said he wasn't going to give them one. They didn't bring home any physical evidence. Often people who are abducted claim to have been sexually violated. If they're male, they I guess get them to ejaculate, collect their sperm. If they're female, they collect their eggs. I don't know how you collect an egg, actually. I should ask my daughter. We did that in vitro fertilization to have my last granddaughter. They don't have to cut somebody to do that. They go in, I guess, through the vagina to get an egg. Because there's no scar on the person that shows that they were operated on. Sometimes there are people who have scars and they don't know how they got it. I have one on the back of my hand here. My wife, how'd you get that? I can't remember how I got it. Somehow I got it stuck in a door or something. I'm sure it wasn't an alien, but there's no real physical evidence. Scientifically, it seems bizarre to believe that an alien species from another galaxy or something would be able to mate with humans. I mean, we can't even mate with orangutans or other primates, and maybe we could have sex with one, but we can't produce a hybrid baby that's half orangutan or half chimpanzee, which are reasonably close species to humans. It just seems unlikely that would be possible, but of course they have all kinds of technologies we don't have or something. They had memories, and many other people began to have similar memories. In 1995, there was a film called The Alien Autopsy. It was presented as leaked footage of an autopsy of an alien that the government had done. After a long period of time and investigation, they admitted that it was a staged reconstruction. It wasn't the actual filming of an autopsy. In 2021, the Pentagon actually issued a report showing some fast-moving lights. The military investigated these things for quite a few years, and to some extent secretly, which fed the conspiracy theories about it. What they said is there are some phenomena that we can't explain. People who are enthusiasts undertook to interpret this as meaning that they recognize UFOs are real. I got a person who's an abduction believer emailed me, am I going to change what I wrote in the 90s because now the government is committed that it's real? What they say is we can't explain everything. We don't believe there's any danger. There doesn't seem to be any consequences. They are really more concerned that it may be Chinese technology or some kind of new technology from other countries on Earth. They've decided that it doesn't need further investigation. There's nothing that's worth their trouble. They did the same thing with ESP and so on. They did quite a few studies, and they didn't say it doesn't exist. They just said it's not of any value. It's not of any use. There's no practical benefit to our continuing to investigate it. Left it at that. Some of the recent stuff I'll talk about a little bit later. This is the flying disc craze in 1947. The media reported a civilian pilot story of witnessing disc-shaped objects, which the headline writers called flying saucers. That started in the summer on June 24th. It peaked on July 7th. And people sort of lost interest in it. It was a sort of a mass phenomenon of going out and looking at the flying saucers. Many mainstream scientists said they were mistaken identifications, mass hysteria. Men of science are pondering what it might be. Nobody really figured it out. But with time, this became established certain incidents. This was the Roswell incident. A 1980 book claimed that an alien craft had crashed and the military recovered bodies from it, but covered it up. That's where it gets into conspiracy theory. There's no evidence. The reason that there's no evidence is there's such a powerful conspiracy to cover up all the evidence. And the fact that they've done that so well proves how powerful they are. That's typical of conspiracy theories, that they have to rely more and more on exaggerating the power of the conspirators to hide the evidence. This happened at the Roswell Army Airfield. That's what RAAF stands for. At first I thought maybe it was the Royal Australian Air Force, but it's not. It's just the Roswell, New Mexico Army Airfield. The newspaper said they captured a flying saucer on the ranch. That's because the Roswell Army Airfield said they had recovered a flying disc, but they quickly retracted it and said that it was a conventional weather balloon that had crashed. You began to have pictures like this. These are photographs of purported UFOs. This one's in Passaic, New Jersey. This is another one. Nobody really knows where these came from. You did not have Photoshop or the technology we have today, so you weren't so used to seeing manufactured pictures. It's probably a false picture of some kind, and it's hard to know given the quality of the image. So nobody knows, but the people who are believers would say that's what was happening, was these flying discs were flying over everywhere. There's an area called Area 51, which is a secret base used for testing military aircraft. And that leads to people being suspicious. It's secret, you're not allowed in. If you drive up there, there's a big sign saying military base, keep out. There was a man who went by the name of Dennis, told a TV reporter a tale that there were fantastic alien ships and secrets of the highest nature. He had learned about the Earth's involvement in a 10,000-year pact with a civilization from the Zeta Reticuli star system, and about forms of physics and engineering that were centuries ahead of our technology. He claimed to have taken part in test flights on 9 different alien aircraft. This turned out to be a tourist attraction, because there's really not much out there in Nevada. Have you ever driven through Nevada? It's a big empty desert. You go a long way, you don't come to anything. And they started the casino industry to attract people. That was quite successful, but it's only successful because every other state doesn't allow it. So people would go to Nevada. Now that there's casinos almost everywhere, they still have, the lights, the glitter in Las Vegas itself. But if you get out of Las Vegas into these remote areas, they don't have much. So this became a tourist attraction. This is the area, Storm Area 51. They can't stop us all. This happened in 2019, which isn't that far back. People said the government is hiding something, and we are going to break in and reveal it. This became a big internet phenomenon. More than 2 million people responded, said they were going. 1.5 million said they were interested, which is not very good rate in terms of RSVP, because the number who actually showed up was 150. So if you were doing an event and you had 1 million people said they were coming, and you only got 150, you probably have a lot of leftover chicken or something. People didn't actually go, they just wanted to show their support. They said they were going. They showed up at the entrance, none succeeded in entering the site. There were two music festivals that coincided. One in Nevada, both in Nevada, and about 1,500 people went to the music festival. But it became a mass internet phenomenon, but not in terms of physical participation. Here you see a sign, "Save ET from the government." And it's hard to know how serious people are taking this. They think it's fun. Whether they really believe it or not, you know, it can be just a hobby sort of thing. And that's clearly the case with the whole ET thing. It's generated all kind of tremendous fictional literature. And it's enjoyable to see all of the science fiction about it that is acknowledged to be fiction. And so it's an entertaining topic. This is the Area 51 Alien Center. I happen to have visited this just a few years ago with my son and his children and my great granddaughter, for that matter. We were traveling to Death Valley. I don't know if you've ever been to Death Valley, but it is the middle of a huge desert. You drive there from Las Vegas, you go through empty country, you get to the town of Beatty, that's where you turn left to go into Death Valley, and this is the rest center. And there's not much else. So you're likely to stop because you've probably driven 30, 40 miles without passing anything where you could get something to drink and get gas for your car. But this I actually took from a travel brochure. You look there, it says Travel Nevada. This is they're highlighting what you can see if you go to Nevada as a tourist. This is their description of it, with a glaring green and pink paint job, complete with an enthusiastic alien motif. The exterior is enough to beckon most drivers off the highway. I don't think that's really true. I think they're getting off the highway because they haven't passed anything else for a couple hours. But there's a gas station, which is good if you need gas, and they have a center brimming with just about anything alien theme you can imagine. You can find alien socks, Area 51 security tees. They did have all this stuff there. It wasn't selling much. They had a model of an alien, but it was clearly just a model. And there's a damn good little restaurant too, which I didn't try. Daddy D's Rocket Diner. Having breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Breakfast beyond, you find the Area 51 brothel and bar. That's another thing in Nevada. Prostitution is legal in rural areas of Nevada. So you have these brothels there, which is sitting right next to the Alien Center. We did not visit the brothel because we had my grandchildren with us, but I did inquire, and they said all of the sex workers working there were human. There are none from any other planet. That would have been an interesting worth a visit if they had anybody who had come from Zeta Reticuli or somewhere to work in a brothel in rural Nevada, but there weren't any such people. So that's the nature of that center. Then we get into the Barney and Betty Hill incidents. And then we're getting into the whole question of abduction and the psychology of that. It is now 3:57, so I think I'm gonna declare our break at this point. I have a lot more material on more recent stuff, and we will get into that in about 10 minutes after the break. So I'm going to pause the recording at this point.
It's good. Oh, yeah, it's not fiction.
Okay, I think it's getting to be about time to start again. This was, we probably remember this. All of us are old enough to remember 1961, I think, or many of us are. You may remember Betty and Barney Hill. They were an interracial couple, although that really didn't come up much in the coverage. They were taking a trip, they were driving in their car, and suddenly they lost memory. There's a period of time when they don't remember what happened. Now, that's something that happens to people, particularly people who are coming down with Alzheimer's or something. You'll end up walking around and you say, how did I get here? What happened to me in the last half hour? It may happen to you if you have been drinking heavily or using drugs or something, but they weren't an elderly couple, and there's no evidence at all that they suffered any kind of mental decline or dementia or anything. They saw an odd light coming at them from above, then they blacked out, found themselves back on the road driving. There's a period of 2 hours that went by, and they have no idea what happened, except that they got the memories of having been taken on board a ship, and that they were abducted by what's called the Greys. There are several different versions of aliens in these reports. Now, their full memory came when they went to see psychologists and hypnotists. They had lost the time. They didn't remember what happened. Their memories were revived through hypnosis and sessions with psychologists. And we can see that's similar to what we saw in the McMartin case and the abduction cases, that in many cases the reports come from memories that are extracted through hypnosis, and that was accepted more at that time. There's a belief that those are real memories. Today, they're not taken as, there's a controversy about it still, but most psychologists and therapists don't believe that you can rely on memories that are extracted through hypnosis, but they got their memories that way. And more people started to report similar experiences. And that's how it became to be more believable, because many people said it. In most cases, it wasn't while they were driving the car. Usually this happened out of your bedroom, and you are abducted from your bedroom and returned to your bedroom. How you get there is unclear, because so you go right through the ceiling. It's sort of like the transporter on Star Trek or something, where you're transported without opening the door or any physical evidence of anything happening to the house. A number of people who were professors started to study this. This is a guy named David Jacobs. He was an associate professor of history at Temple University. I happened to be at Rutgers in Camden, across the river from Philadelphia. So I went over and met him. I got to know him. He was a historian. He taught a variety of classes on 20th century American history, and one on unidentified flying objects in American society. He had done his doctoral dissertation on this movement. And what happened to him is that he talked to so many experiencers, as they call it, that they became convinced that this really was true, and became a believer, having been first just studying it. Because their story seemed so plausible, that was enough to convince him. He believed that humans are being impregnated and forced to have hybrid babies. These hybrids are now walking among us. Now, you'd think if it was hybrid, it would look different from a human, but apparently not. That's what JonGuy was saying. That's the theory, that there's these, when he talks about reptilians, they have a base on the far side of the moon, and they disguise themselves as human. Many of your political leaders are really these reptilian creatures that's that theory. He says at least 2% of Americans have been abducted, and they use a mind scan procedure to entrance humans. They used a survey research to ask people questions about experiences they had, which they interpreted as being abduction experiences. He published a book called First Secret Life, First and Documented Accounts of UFO Abductions, based on interviews with 60 individuals, 300 corroborated accounts. This is the book description off of Amazon. Most complete and accurate picture of alien abductions. He takes you on a minute-by-minute summary. And he started to offer support groups. So you had like support groups of what they call experiencers. And they come together and say, our problems are caused by the fact that we were abducted. And there are people who have some sort of psychological issue, and it can be explained because the aliens did something to them. It becomes, in effect, a form of therapy. This was a book called Measuring the Prevalence of Unusual Personal Experiences. I happen to have done an article called Measuring the Prevalence of False Memories. We did a survey in the South Jersey population with my methods of research class. I said that the questions that I used talked about related sorts of experiences. Now, these are the questionnaires that they use to establish how many people have been abducted. If you wake up paralyzed with the sense of a strange person or presence or something in the room, experiencing a period of a time of an hour or more in which you were apparently lost because you couldn't remember where you'd been, feeling that you're flying through the air, seeing lights or balls in the air, finding puzzling scars on your body. I've got one right here, right now. And neither you nor anyone remembering how you received it. If you have 4 out of 4 or 5 of these, then you're considered an abductee in his research. That's how I got the millions of people being abducted. Now, the sleep paralysis is something that has a lot to do with it. This is a normal phenomenon. We all experience sleep paralysis, hopefully, when we're asleep. Otherwise, you experience sleepwalking, which is worse. Or you're dreaming. Your mind is still working when you're asleep. And dreaming is an important part of human psychology, how the brain works. But your body does not act it out. And listen, like my daughter, sometimes she gets up and she's walking around in her sleep. You know, that's when the sleep paralysis breaks down. There is a period between being asleep and being awake. It's called the hypnagogic period, I believe. That is sort of vague. You don't really know whether you're asleep or awake. You're making that transition. And you may see things that are really part of your dream world that you confuse with the awake world. Some people do that more than others. But if you sort of wake up gradually, that is an explanation for this phenomenon, that people are dreaming things and then they're mixing their dream world with their actual world. There are people, of course, who are mental illnesses where they can't distinguish the dream world from the real world. That's a skill. That's a question with children. John was talking about that. If you teach children about Santa Claus and Easter Bunny, is that getting them out of touch with reality? Or, you know, really small children don't distinguish between fantasy and reality in the way that adults do. I don't know that it's harmful to teach them about Santa Claus. I don't know if there's any research about that. I found other questions that I put in my questionnaire. If you've ever seen a terrifying figure, which might have monster or a witch, another evil figure in your bedroom. Have you seen a ghost? Have you had vivid dreams? The people who qualified as abductees by Jacob's questionnaire seem to be people who had a lot of these kinds of experiences. So many people did research on this. It's just one study that we happen to do. It seems that there are some people who are more prone to having these sorts of experiences than others. My first wife used to get these. She would wake, oh my God, something terrible happened to her grandmother or somebody in the family. I remember this happened 4 or 5 times. Problem is, we called them up and they were just fine. Nothing had actually happened. So we realized that, that's something that you're thinking about. You get something, every once in a while, one of them will be right, and then you think that's amazing. I knew that such and such had happened. I published my study, and it got picked up by the National Enquirer, which is probably the largest publication I've ever had. But they twisted it around backwards. I was glad they called me a top university researcher, which was nice. But they reported that I did a study, but then they quoted this other guy, Ron Westrom from Michigan, as to what the study meant. So they never said what I thought it meant, which was it was false memories. They said that it was what he said it meant, which is this really happened. It proves that 8 million people may have been abducted by UFOs. There was not a single word in the story that is false. In the sense, every sentence is correct, but you put them all together, it gives you the opposite impression. It's a very clever publication. I don't think people who read it take it too seriously, so it didn't seem to cause any problems. But I did get a telephone call from a woman. She said she was so happy that I had proved that the UFOs are real because the UFOs had parked over her house and they had irradiated her house with rays, and it had cured her rheumatism and all of her problems. She had aches and pains and she was feeling better. She was just feeling, like she'd been cured, and thank goodness. So I'm not going to say, sorry, my study said it's false. I didn't want to tell her that. I said, oh, I'm so glad you're feeling better. Left at that. I'm not a therapist, but that's an ethical problem for a therapist. If you think something's really a false memory, but it's working for them, should you contradict it or not? I don't know. I mean, I don't have to worry about that. I wasn't her therapist. I could have told her anything, but I didn't feel I wanted to do that. But that's what goes on with these experiencer groups, is that people enjoy being in the group. They enjoy meeting other experiencers, as they call it, and having an explanation for their problems. Suppose you have a problem, you have anxieties, or you have some sort of problem with feeling depressed or something. If you have an explanation for it, maybe that helps. You can blame it on something. On the other hand, maybe not. Maybe you'd be better off finding out the real reason of what's going on, going into psychoanalysis or something. I don't know. I'm not, I don't do therapy, so I don't have that responsibility, but it's a question. And there are various groups that have offered this sort of therapy to people. Now, this is another very prominent academic, John Mack, MD. He is actually a psychiatrist. He was the head of the psychiatry program at Harvard University, which is a very prestigious place to be. And he had written a biography of Lawrence of Arabia that had gotten a Pulitzer Prize. So he's a very prominent person. And he decided to look into these abduction experiences. He related the accounts of 13 experiencers he had interviewed. He never says that he was sure they were right. He says you can't be sure. It seems they seem to plausible. It seems believable. They don't have any mental illness that explains it. And he's saying that as a psychiatrist. Second book, Passport to the Cosmos, he saw abductions of only one of the mysterious crossovers confronting the human consciousness. He is beginning to say this is part of it's similar to religious experiences that people have. There's all sorts of shamanic soul flights, people have apparitions of the Virgin Mary. He's sort of backing away from saying it's real. He's saying, what is reality anyway? Reality is what's in our heads. We don't really know. There was quite a controversy about this because what made it have a big impact was the fact of his being a psychiatrist at Harvard University and saying that it was real. When he began to say, we don't know what the difference is between reality and mystical experiences anyway. This is a review that came out in Time magazine called The Man from Outer Space, questioning Max, not so much his sanity as his motives and methodology, because he also relied on hypnosis, extracting memories through hypnosis, and that's possibly endangering the mental health of his patients. This was a woman named Donna Bassett decided to see if she could fake it. She was a writer and researcher. She read his studies. She decided that she would present herself as an experiencer and see if he would believe her or not. She went into 3 of his hypnotic regression sessions, where she said she used method acting techniques to fake her way through them. Eventually served as treasurer of an abductee support group, where she said she's never seen a UFO, never been inside. She just made the whole thing up. But she made up a rather bizarre memory. She said that when she was abducted into the flying saucer, who was there but John F. Kennedy and Nikita Khrushchev, who were also there. And Nikita Khrushchev was crying. So she sat on his laps and put his arm around him and told him it would be okay, which I guess is how we got out of the Cuban Missile Crisis. The aliens abducted the 2 of them and worked it out maybe, but she made this up, and Matt bought it all. He said, well, maybe that's what happened. You know, he was not willing to, he was so excited, he leaned on the bed and the bed collapsed. He thought this was a very exciting revelation. This went into a controversy at Harvard University. The dean of the medical school appointed a committee to review what he was doing in terms of it being clinical care, in terms of his responsibilities as a physician. You know, if you're just a historian, you can study whatever you want, or a sociologist like me. If you're a physician, you're supposed to be offering medical treatment that helps people. They had a lot of questions about it. To communicate in any way whatsoever that a person has reported a close encounter with an extraterrestrial life form, to say that this experience might well have been real is professionally irresponsible. In the first draft of their report, they got a lot of people coming to his defense. It's an interesting book, The Believer, which is a biography of him by Ralph Blumenthal. And he just became more and more of a new age believer in all sorts of freak phenomenon, and more books about that. The problem with that is there's already a lot of people doing that. It wasn't anything so new. So he became less prominent and his stuff was taken less seriously. He had first written an article for the American Journal of Psychiatry. They wanted to cut it back, make it shorter. He made it into a book. He cited David J. Hufford's book, The Terror That Comes in the Night, accounts of sleepers who were suffocated by a malign entity that crushed their chest, other types of memories that people have. And he did see that the UFO abduction phenomenon was similar to people's beliefs about ghosts and beliefs about gremlins and various things that had happened at different forms of history. It's very much of a sort of a scientific updating of a lot of stuff that that people have believed for a long time, but not claiming that it came from extraterrestrial. You had a number of therapy places around there. This was a place called TREAT, for Treatment and Research of Experienced Anomalous Trauma. Now they're trying to give it a DSM diagnosis. That's a Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the American Psychiatric Association. Once you have a diagnosis, presumably you could bill for treatment, and it gets into the whole thing of charging Medicare for treating your experienced anomalous disorder, experienced anomalous trauma. They drop the experience is what the DSM does. You have anomalous trauma is a trauma that that you feel came from some anomalous experience, whether it's real or not is not taken as critical. From this stage, we moved on to the next stage. After abduction, we came to the hidden truth, forbidden knowledge, what they call close encounters of the fifth kind. There are different types of encounters. Just when you just see something, it's the first kind. If you're abducted, it's the second kind. I'm not sure what the third and fourth are, but the fifth encounter, he claims that we have, in fact, the aliens are here, but they connect to us only through our mind. So the fifth kind of connection is purely mental. And it's something of a mental field, a psychological field that pervades the universe and does not follow the laws of physics. For example, in physics, there is the principle that the maximum speed is the speed of light. Nothing can go faster than the speed of light. And that's a very big limitation for this whole extraterrestrial business. Because if you look at Zeta Reticuli or some of these places they're talking about, they may be 500 light years from here. So the distances out there in interstellar space are enormous. Now, there are some stars that are maybe 5 years away. That's assuming you travel at the speed of light. In practice, if we were to send a spaceship, we would be lucky to get it up to half the speed of light. That we would never achieve anything like that. But they claim that this doesn't follow that. It can be instantaneous. It can arrive, and you don't have any physical connection. The connection has become totally psychological. I just clicked on the wrong thing here. I don't need to go out to that. This is my slides are out of order. I don't know if I want to go to this one right now. This is 2021, how the Pentagon started taking UFOs seriously. I'm going to go back a little bit out of order here rather than try to correct it. This was the national UFO demonstration in 1993. Anybody make it to that demonstration by any chance? I did not make it to it myself, but I did attend a meeting of people who had been there and come back and brought literature. That's where I got this, excuse me, that's where I got this leaflet that had been passed out at the demonstration and UFO secrecy. This really moves into the conspiracy theory field that we're moving into. So the conspiracies about UFOs, that the reason we don't have evidence is that people, it's hidden, yes.
Who sponsored this?
I don't know. That I don't know. It was an independent organization, Operation Right to Know. But who was a member of that, I'm not sure. I went to this one meeting of people who come back. It was like, you know, you have organize a big demonstration in Washington, you have a committee that's put together. It wasn't any formal organization. Operation Right to Know. This information could save your life and freedom. The coming official announcement of alien presence on Earth. Why Star Wars, the Hubble Space Telescope, and the sudden fall of communism. All of these are explained by the alien presence on Earth. There is overwhelming evidence in the past several years from whistleblowers, retired military officials who said enough is enough. Tell the truth, which is that the government knows all about this and is hiding it from us. Sightings of UFOs, unidentified flying objects, have been reported throughout history. Flaming chariots and a 40s alien spacecraft were recovered by the US and other countries, along with a few dead aliens and one live one they named EB. And name suggested by Vannevar Bush, who was one of the early computer scientists that developed things like the internet and so on. So they're claiming that they're here, it's all been hidden by not just the US government, but a number of governments. And 54, the race of aliens known as Greys, or Zeta Reticuli, area in space, have been orbiting the equator, landed at Holloman Air Force Base, stated that their planet was dying and they needed quarters on Earth to conduct genetic experiments. This is something you can see as a theme for a science fiction book or something, but they're claiming that this really happened, yes.
They have a Facebook page.
What?
Operation Right to Know. They are 988 members.
I could get there fast.
They have a Facebook page, Operation Right to Know.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, they have
They're still going.
988 members, followers.
Okay. But you can't tell me who organized it.
Right.
So this group is still around. Okay, there are lots of these kind of groups out there, but I wasn't aware that it was still going. What I think is interesting in here, this applies into our next class, is conspiracy theories. Conclusions: the Bilderbergers, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, and the secret government rule this nation through MJ12 and the study group known as the Adjacent Society. Now, if you happen to have taken my course on conspiracy theories, you heard about some of these groups, the Bilderbergers. This goes back to a lot of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories that are very old, that have nothing to do with aliens. They're tying it all in together. And if you read anything about conspiracy theories, you'll hear about the Bilderbergers, the Council on Foreign Relations. Throughout history, the aliens have manipulated or ruled the human race through various secret societies. So you see the Council on Foreign Relations, which is actually a study group that puts out things where we have a course next semester. I think on foreign relations, they send you readings and so on. It's nothing sinister about the Council on Foreign Relations. The Trilateral Commission is a thing where, it's like Davos, where representatives of various governments get together and they're powerful and so on. This is all being done behind the scenes by the aliens. Apparently they're still out there on Facebook. I had not looked at that. I'll take a look at that between now and the next class, see what it looks like. This is a Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. This is a full-length feature film. It's a documentary about Contact Has Begun. This is released in 2020. I'm going to just play. I see I made a note here to go to minute 58. So we'll watch a little bit of this. You'll get some of the flavor of it. Slide her up to 58.
It has an equal chance of shining in all four quadrants. But you give it enough time, and what you find is the light actually shines far more often on the plant than on the other coordinates. It's as though life itself, even life or consciousness in something as simple as a houseplant, bends probabilities in the physical world in the direction of what it needs, in the direction of its growth and its evolution. I see that experiment as profound because it shows to me what consciousness does in the world.
How could ESP work? Does ESP violate any physics? First of all, you can't violate the laws of physics, not like going through a stop sign. If you have a phenomenon, physics has to change to agree with your phenomena.
The biggest interest in classified intelligence projects has to do with the science of consciousness. Because even during the Cold War and before, in World War II, they realized that there were people on the other side of some of those conflicts that were very adept at what's now called remote viewing, the ability to use consciousness to spy on a remote place. These programs began to be studied scientifically and then routinized, made routine in the intelligence community back in the 40s, 50s, 60s.
You could say my spiritual development was paid for by the CIA. It's a very unusual situation.
In 1972, Dr. Russell Targ, a laser physicist at the Lockheed Missile and Space Company, joined the Stanford Research Institute to begin a CIA-funded psychic espionage program using remote viewing to gather intelligence on distant targets.
So we had a 20-year program at Stanford in which we worked with the...
Okay, I just want to give you a little of the flavor of that. If you're interested in it, it's just on YouTube. You can watch the whole documentary. But what it comes down to is the whole thing is mental. You get these mental connections. There's no physical evidence or anything up on that idea altogether. This is another book that came out recently. I published a review of this in Skeptical Inquirer. It's called Beyond UFOs, the Science of Consciousness in Contact with Non-Human Intelligence. This is a real social scientific study. They did interviews with hundreds of experiencers, and they have long transcripts of what the people said. That's what makes it interesting. More than the statistical part is the actual quotes. The interesting and valuable parts of the book report on the qualitative interviews. The problem is there's nothing in it that suggests extraterrestrial content. The messages from the non-human intelligence include commonplaces such as advocacy of love, oneness, and unity. The assertion that the human race of Earth is overpopulated. Experience report that we have many lives but one existence. What does that mean, many lives but one existence? I was surprised by their connection to Zen, Tao experience. I now understand myself to be part of a universal consciousness that is linked not only to every being in the universe, but also to the entire universe. Now, these are positive messages. People are happy about this. People feel that they are more content. They have less fear of death. They're not anxious about things. And in many ways, it's similar to a religious conversion or where people get a religious belief. It makes them feel better. People feel that they understand, they know what their purpose of life is. They're going to live after they die, whatever. The problem is it's nothing new. There's really nothing there that you can't get in the Bible, so it's all the same. And this was the people that I met with in New Jersey. That's what they felt, that these aliens are very positive, had a positive message, which is, stop fighting wars, get along with other people, things of that sort. Let's see, one report, the only thing that happened to my spirituality they had asked them about scientific facts. There is no such thing as time. It is not a part of space as a space-time, but is just a measure of motion relative to particle activity. The physical part of your body is a frozen consciousness. Each dimension has 12 dimensions attached to it, which makes 144 altogether. As we evolve over the span of many lives, our vibrational frequency increases and we gradually move up the ladder. So they're getting insights. Those are the kind of insights that anybody might dream up. They're not something like a great new solution for Matt's last theorem or something new in terms of astronomical information. What they're getting is that very banal sorts of insights. One experiencer asked a non-human intelligence to tell me something that I don't already know, something totally new, so I can verify that you are not me. The answer I received shook me to the core. The alleged ET communicated in a mocking tone. If you believe in universal consciousness, as you claim you do, what difference does it make whether it's your consciousness or ours? So really, if you feel you've got a real good consciousness, why worry about where it came from? Recently, we've had another flap. This is an article that was in the New Yorker magazine, which is a mainstream magazine by Elizabeth Kohlberg, is one of their writers, arguing that signs of intelligent, eminent astrophysicist argues that signs of intelligent life have appeared in our skies. And you begin to get unexplained lights in the sky. This is 3 videos taken by Navy pilots.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA.
Yeah, something
Oh my gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude.
Being unidentified to this day. Something happened, we don't know what it is. Here's a UFO skeptic offering an explanation. That's the same video, so I'll just skip his explanation. This is a more recent one. This is from 2022, which is very recent. You have reports from pilots of lights in the sky. They were slowly moving from left to right. The pulses would be gradual, start very dim, grow into a bright light about the brightness of Venus, and then fade away. The best way to describe what we saw is 2 to 3 aircraft circling in left-hand turns with their landing lights on, which means that they were only clearly visible when the lights were facing towards us. They're saying this is not a Starlink train, which I'm going to get into in a minute. 40 to 60 satellites, lasted 55 minutes. I believe it was the same 2 or 3 objects the whole time flying in circles. So that's a description from a pilot. It's quite detailed. What he is saying is that it's not a Starlink train. Turns out that this is Elon Musk. He's behind a lot of things. He's behind a lot of the UFO sightings, not intentionally. This is something called Starlink, which is a new internet service that is one of the companies that Musk has. It involves very low flying satellites and a large network of very low flying satellites that cover large areas of the Earth. It's not everywhere. When they launch them, they send out a train of satellites. As you see, you can barely make it out here, but there's this train of satellites going in a row as if they were being piloted as a mule train or something. That's how they launch these satellites. They're displayed in a certain pattern. And if you subscribe to this series, you can get internet from that. You have to install it yourself. It's kind of innovative. It's actually being used in Ukraine now because it gives the Ukrainian soldiers a way to get information from their base through the Starlink because they're in remote areas and they don't have cable internet or something like we have, or even the stupid thing that I have, Frontier Internet. But the pilots are saying that's not really what it is. It's really, they're not in a train. Now this critic says that what they really are seeing is Starlink. It's not very visible, but they moved them into a circle. And that is, in fact, in his opinion, what the pilots are seeing. The interesting thing about this discovery is that it contradicts what they said they observed. On the Bettabunk forum, a poster called Flarkey began to correlate videos of the racetrack lights. They're calling it lights that look like a racetrack going in a circle with known Starlink trajectories. And he found that whenever they saw this, this is when the Starlink trajectories were out. Now, one of the UFO enthusiasts has put it on Reddit. 30 plus pilots and air crew reported the racetrack UFOs over 7 weeks. Those pilots have experience flying in every type of aircraft for years and years. To say they can't distinguish between some satellites and something truly anomalous is silly. You've got to believe these are pilots, they're trained people, they're reporting what they saw. There's only one catch to this, is that all of these airplanes have video cameras. So you get their report of what they saw, you also have the video of what they saw. And this is the flaw in the argument, because many of the eyewitness accounts are accompanied by videos. We can see from those videos that not only are the lights Starlink satellites, the very thing the pilots insist they were not, but even the pilots' descriptions of the videos don't match what is seen in the videos. They describe objects moving in circles or loops, when all that is seen in the videos are lights that move in straight lines. So it's a tendency to say that if you have somebody who is a trained observer, a reputable person, they're telling you what they saw, and they're honest. Nobody claims that these pilots are making anything up or stating something that they don't believe. It's not like they're UFO people that are marketing this sort of thing, but somehow they perceive it as one thing and it's something else. And a video camera does not see it the same way. And that goes back to the whole idea of you putting something into a frame. You look at something, you expect to see a certain thing and you see it that way. And sometimes, I'm looking at something, I think it's one thing, and it occurs to me I'm seeing something totally different. And your cognitive framework or what you think does influence what you perceive. But today we have video, and you have video for just about everything. And that's what really killed a lot of the UFO movement, because people would say, okay, this thing came, these guys came out, why didn't you take out your phone and take a nice video picture of the alien? We expect to see a video of something. If the police beat up some poor guy, kick him to death, there's a video. I mean, you got a video of everything. You'd think at least once there would be a real decent video picture of a UFO or of an alien or something if they're actually coming down. Now, the people, the fifth kind people, people who say it's all mental, they say that there are different dimensions, and they're going from the psychic dimension to the physical dimension. And that's why the videos are all fuzzy, because everybody takes a video right when it's halfway in the mental division and halfway in the physical division. But somehow there's never a decent video. There's never any physical evidence. Other things come up. This is Umanamuma, I don't know how you pronounce it, but this was a interstellar object that's going through the solar system and is not rotating around the Earth. And that is rare, that something comes from someplace else. Everything else in our solar system rotates around the Earth. This is just passing through. People speculate that maybe it was a spaceship. Maybe it's just something else that's out there, but nobody really knows what it is. This is an article. This is just one other thing that's coming. I happened to see recently, Forbidden Knowledge, a personal journey from alien abduction to spiritual transformation. This is by Kathleen Martin, who is the niece of Betty and Barney Hill. So they're continuing it as a family sort of tradition. She's written her own book. Personal struggle with the unknown has carried her through twists and turns and glimpses of mysterious reality. She concealed her knowledge because certain powers threatened to stand in her way. Now she's revealed it. You can find the answers in this fascinating book. I just read the description on Amazon. I didn't buy the book, but it's available. But it's all in her head. And she doesn't deny that. It's just, that's where reality really is. She says, memories are like a jigsaw puzzle. They piece together life's patterns that make us each unique. They speak in uncanny clarity and puncture our serenity with incomprehensible, available thoughts. So you have all kinds of memories. You can put them together into that frame, or you can put them in another frame. This is a final article I want to listen to. Came out in the Washington Post. UFO mania is out of control. Please stop. This guy is a science reporter. He says he would really love to be the one who writes the story. The aliens are here. The aliens have arrived. That would be the story of his lifetime. The problem is, whenever you get one of these rumors, it never really happens. Scientists and reporters tend to be wary of conspiracy theories. When it depends upon a conspiracy that the evidence has been hidden, or even that the aliens are running everything. Most amazing, stunning, mind-boggling new concepts are wrong. The bolder the idea, the more likely it will evaporate in the harsh glare of scientific sunshine, like cold fusion. And that is perhaps the secret to why it's hard to persuade people, because true science doesn't come out with some marvelous new thing that's going to cure cancer and is going to solve all your problems. True science will probably say, well, you really got to take some kind of antidepressant and go into therapy and work on it. It's not going to give you that kind of an answer. People would like that. It's certainly popular in fiction. And if you like to read fiction, science fiction, I like watching Star Trek and so on. I mean, that's entertainment. But the harsh glare of reality often is not a great transformation. It's not like a great change has come. As you get with a new religious prophet, there's a new religious revival taking out in Kentucky recently. The religious college, and thousands of people are straining in, and you're getting a feeling, and you can get that by belief in Jesus, or you can get that by belief in the flying saucers, or anything you can believe in, what may make you feel better. And that, I think, has a lot to do with why it takes off. So that's where we're going to end for today. Next week, we will do conspiracy theories. I did do a course on that. I know some of you took that before. You probably forgot it all anyway, but I will repeat some, but there's new stuff coming out. So I'm going to emphasize things that have happened in the last few years in the conspiracy theory field, as well as review the older stuff. And then we'll have an internet-only class on Saturday, March 11th at 3. So that'll be the remainder of the class. And I think we can be more successful with discussion on the internet, because I can hear people splitting up between half the people on Zoom and half in here. Makes it more difficult. So see you in a week.